Welcome to Reflections with Ray podcast. Every week we explore life coaching wisdom skills through pop culture, music, history, sports, relationships, and the Bible. Each episode breaks down the lessons, successes, and struggles of baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, Gen Z, helping every generation better understand the others. If you're looking to bridge communication gaps, repair the breach, and gain practical insights through powerful storytelling, this podcast is for you. Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are listening or watching this podcast. My name is Ray, and this is episode number 2 of Reflections with Ray podcast. My name is Ray Diggs, and the name of this second ever podcast is Never Surrender Part 2. Before I begin, a couple of things I want to do. First off, I definitely want to acknowledge and thank my personal Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, who, again, He's given me the ability, the voice, the mind, and the will, and given me this platform to present information, glorify Him, lead people who has free will to make the choice to listen, not listen, hear instructions, not hear instructions, better their lives, or live the way they want to live. I want to thank God for giving me this opportunity again. I want to thank the listeners and viewers for your time. Definitely want to again acknowledge my executive producer, my wife of 29 years, Lisa, my immediate family. Matter of fact, let me give a shout out to my first cousin Trina. Happy birthday to you. Her birthday was last week. I also want to give a shout out props to a Marine who is in Arizona, my first cousin Anthony, who is more like a brother to me than anything. Thank you, sir. Greetings unto you. What's up? To all my friends and family members back home in the San Francisco Bay Area, from my mom, my nephews, my nieces, my sister, to all the homeboys and homegirls in San Francisco, particularly the Fillmore district, to my brothers and sisters from the San Francisco State Chapter, my alma mater of InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. You know who you are. Peace unto you and your families, and to my brothers and sisters here in the Inland Empire, Orange County area. Breath of the Spirit Ministries, Dr. Michelle Corral, my pastor and spiritual mom. God bless you. And again, to the lady who prepared me to do this, the host and founder of the Goal Digger, Jenna Kushner. Thank you again. And let me give a shout out to my contributors, my godsons, Christopher and Isaiah, to my associate producers. I'm just having some fun here. Plus, daylight savings times knocked me off. We sprung forward. So that's another story for another day. I want to acknowledge my associate producers, Ebony, Osmahan, Rama. I want to acknowledge the three of you. Thank you for your contributions. And to my assistant producers representing Gen Z, Princess and Baby Girl, Papa Ray loves you. And thank you again for your prayers, your input. I want to pay homage to two people that are in the courts of heaven. The first one is my best friend, my confidant, my father figure, my big brother Michael. On Saturday, the 7th of March, was the 6th anniversary of his passing. One of the things my brother told me before his departure, he told me, Ray, you better be prepared to do two things. Number one, God has given you a platform, He's giving you the tools, He's giving you the voice. Do it. What you waiting on? That's number one. Number two, he told me, you better be ready because the time will come when you will be the father figure to those who don't have. When they start calling you Papa Ray, I told you. So he was right. So I want to, you know, pay homage to my big brother. When I was thinking about the next podcast and was processing everything, God had woke me up one morning at 4:30, was up since then until the following night. I wanted to go back to sleep for 2 hours. God said, nope. I said, I can't go back to sleep. Nope. And all I get is say, somebody want me to pray? Nope. I said, okay, you have me up. He said, I'm giving you the download for your next podcast. And I just lied there, just listening, listening, listening. And that's when he said, Never Surrender Part 3. I said, wait a minute. I ain't even done Part 2. Part 2 is going to be Part 3. I'm giving you Part 2 right now. And I'm like, okay, fine, all right. And half a Pepsi and 2 cups of coffee, not all at once, didn't help me that day because I could not take day off. I had to go to work. So I'm like, okay. But one more person I want to pay homage to, and that is my auntie Dolores Williams. She is my mom's older sister. She was a second mom to me last week. And I'm still kind of pinching myself. I'm like, it's been 2 years. She's gone. But my auntie Dolores always backed me up, always encouraged me to speak out because she knew there was something inside me that came from her father, my grandfather, Mr. Willie, World War II veteran, country preacher, U.S. Army, war in the Pacific. And she always encouraged me to, take that stand and use this platform as well. So I pay homage to my big brother Michael, my auntie Dolores, my mom's older sister, and they're both smiling right now from the courts of heaven saying, do it, nephew. Told you, baby brother, what you waiting on? So I'm like, okay, fine. So wanted to do that. Now, this is what I want to talk about concerning basically part two of Never Surrender. It was in part one a quick overview of what was happening in Iran about the changing of the guard. Since then, Ayatollah Khomeini, he was killed. 40 of his top people, including his wife, were killed. And, attacks, strategic attacks. Now, at the time of this recording, his son has been named successor, never held office before. And all I'm going to say is if you think negotiating with this guy is going to help, you better look right back at history. Negotiating, and I'm not talking about the people, the Iranian people, nor the Persian Jews there. I am not talking about there. I am talking about the folks that were running the place. If you think negotiating with those people, the philosopher George Santayana said, and I quote, those who don't learn history from the past is doomed to repeat it. Think about that. Okay. So that is what is happening. And ever since that, a lot of Iranians that are either still in their homeland or are in the United States, they are now speaking up. They are now using the platform that I believe Abba Father God has given them to let people know the atrocities, especially to women and little girls. I mean, come on, let's get real here. I'm just going to dive right into it. How is it that somebody's mindset, thinking, or religion from that area is a religion of peace that then President George W. Bush said? And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Grown men marrying girls at 9 years old. Last time I checked, that's called pedophilia. Okay. When you have children as young as 4 years old in school and you making them chant death to Israel, death to America, that's not cute. That's a threat. I said that in part one. I'm going to say it in part two. And it's very well documented. Look it up. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. Do your homework. And if you're getting your information from the mainstream news media, you're going to be in the dark. You're going to be lost. And it shows that you're lazy. Look it up. I've done it too. Before this broadcast that I am taping right now, I had to do my research. I spent practically nearly all day over the weekend on Saturday preparing for stuff like this and doing homework and constantly doing homework. Was even typing up the notes up until 2 o'clock in the morning. And then as 2 o'clock in the morning hit, boom, daylight savings time, spring forward, lost an hour. It immediately became 3:30. So I'm giving you a short review of what has happened in part one, what was covered, the history of what has happened when the Shah of Iran was run out of, and his family, they were run out of Iran. Ayatollah Khomeini and his bunch came in, the mullahs, and basically hijacked people, a country, hijacked them, period, and brought in their brand of rulership, which was a dictatorship. Okay, so you have that going on, and then at the same time, all of it's a whole bunch of blackmail, threats, money extortion, while their own people are being tortured, women are being raped, and then they are murdered, period. Again, don't take my word for it. Look it up. Or if you know somebody who is from Iranian slash Persian you know, descendant, talk to them. And it happened to me, and they'll tell you all of it. They will not give you the mainstream media's version of we didn't do anything. They didn't do anything to us. We all got a laundry list of what Iran has been doing. And one of the things my cousin Trina mentioned to me, and we needed to deal with Iran. They should have been dealt with long time ago. They've been bullying us. They've been disrespecting us. They've been blackmailing us. They've been threatening us. And now you got this. It is time we deal with them. And she's absolutely right. When all this was going on, the Jewish feast festival called Purim or Purim happened, and it is around Queen Esther and her uncle Mordecai saving the Persian Jews from destruction from somebody who just creeped themselves into office right under the nose of King Ahasuerus, who basically became the prime minister of Persia, and that is Haman. Okay, and all Haman wanted to do was make money off the Jews and then kill them. Okay, that was basically it. What the book of Esther in the Old Testament Bible is talking about, it's highlighting themes of divine protection, divine providence, okay, and spiritual perseverance, okay? In other words, I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to quote something here. Bible, Old Testament, chapter 4, book of Esther, chapter 4, verses 13 through 14. Bottom line is the decree went out, like I mentioned earlier, that was signed by King Ahasuerus, sealed with the seal ring, but he was in a gluttonous, drunk state, couldn't think straight because his vagus nerve that connects from your head all the way to your belly was so out of whack from 8 years of gluttonous, drunken partying and everything. I'm surprised the man lived that long. I mean, come on, think about it, folks. I mean, dealing with that for 8 hours is bad enough, but 8 months? I'm surprised the man, can you imagine what his kidneys, his liver, and his digestive system look like? If his body's all out of whack like that, there is no way in the world that man is going to make a decision. That man cannot make, cannot, not even thinking about God for wisdom whatsoever. And then you wonder how Haman could creep in. Basically, Haman caught Ahasuerus slipping. Yeah, caught you. Oh, come on. Y'all know the old school rap song by Ice T, original gangster. Catch me slipping. I can even get worked. There you come on. Come on. Let's have some fun here and learn something here. Bottom line is if you don't have people watching your back, if you don't, and I said this in part one, if you don't have people watching your back, looking out for your best interest and for the best interest of you know people in reverse order, then you're going to screw up like Ahasuerus did. And when you and you're going to have somebody like Haman who caught you slipping, caught you with your guard down. He's going to creep in, take power, and have you sign a decree that cannot be overturned, signifying that the Jews cannot defend themselves, they cannot protect themselves, they cannot protect their property, and whatever weapons they have is taken away from them. Does that sound like gun control here in the United States of America? Figure it out, people. Really? Okay, so that is what has happened. And when that decree went out, going back to Esther chapter 4, verse 13, then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself if thou shalt escape in the king's house. In other words, oh, you think you immune to that decree so you could hide out here while your people getting killed? Think again, baby. That is just a paraphrase, people. Okay. All righty. Then Mordecai, verse 13, commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether hold your peace at this time, then shall there an enlargement and deliverance ariseth to the Jews from another place. Thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? In other words, I explained this in part one. Esther was an orphan named Hadassah. She was taken in by Mordecai, who, as you know, God elevated him to have such an influence to King Ahasuerus and his cabinet. He did not bow, he did not assimilate, he did not give in to the decadence, the ways of King Ahasuerus' administration. And his administration dictated what was happening all throughout the land. And you wonder why they had 8 months of wild orgies, gluttonous this, and drunkard parties. They were bragging about themselves. They were slapping themselves on the back, slapping themselves on their fat bellies and all this and that. I mean, come on. How are you going to think when you're so intoxicated and your belly is so full? Now you got to fight being drunk. You got to fight, hanging out to the, instead of worshiping God, you're worshiping the porcelain crown. That's right. Figure it out. You know what the porcelain crown is. You're laying at the feet of the porcelain crown, worshiping it. It's like, are you saying he was throwing up? Oh, figure it out. Knock off the gaslighting, folks. Come on. Yes. That's how you worship the porcelain crown. I do not want to do a TMI moment. Y'all can figure it out, okay? Ahasuerus and his bunch were worshiping the porcelain crown. And let me throw something in. I got to throw one more scripture in here because God is really dropping this on me. Even before the broadcast, he dropped this on me. And this is the book of Romans, the book of Romans, chapter 1, okay? Verse 28. Even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness. And it gives you all everything of all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters. Boy, that's a party list, isn't it? Inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, no respect of authority, without without understanding. Covenant breakers. Yeah, don't ever get into a covenant contract with folks like that. They'll stab you in the back, throw you under the bus, and run you over with the bus. Hello, somebody. Without natural affections, grown men marrying girls that are 9 years old, unnatural affections, figure it out. Incapable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death. I'm reading what the Bible says, okay? Not only do the same thing, but have pleasure in them that do them. And you wonder why you have some folks who get involved in stuff that I just read based on Romans chapter 1, verses 28 through 32. They want to justify their actions by having people join in with them to justify their actions. I'm like, excuse me, why don't you leave everybody else alone? You want to live like that? That's your business. You're going to pay the price for that. That's why when I see adults do something like that and then they want their kids to join in or somebody else's kids, leave the kids alone. Leave them alone. Now, this is interesting that I, I was going to save this for later, but Abba Father God said, no, 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 you're going to hit it right now. I said, yes, sir. So that was the summary, plus also what really I was going to get into later on. But Abba Father God said, no, you're going to hit it right now. Okay. And again, in this episode, it's part two. We're talking about moral and spiritual perseverance. Okay. And again, young man, young lady, my brother, my sister, sir, ma'am, you were created for such a time as this, like Esther and Mordecai. Okay? The talents and the platform that you have, they don't belong to you. The talents and the platform that I'm using right now doesn't belong to me. It belongs to God. And as the late great radio broadcaster, whether you like him or not, whether you agree with him or not, Rush Limbaugh said, and I quote, talent on loan from God. It's true. Talent on loan from God. There you go. And this platform and your talents, they are not used to make a name for yourself. It is not used to boost yourself up. It is there to help others. That is, excuse me, is the reason why Hadassah became Esther the queen, to save her people and herself from destruction. I mean, Mordecai could have kept his mouth shut. He could have assimilated and everything. He said, I ain't doing that. And that's when Haman went off and tried to have him killed. Well, guess who's hanging from the rafters now? Or should I say the gallows? Haman and his 10 sons. Look it up. Okay, there is one other, I'm going to give you an example, a historic example of for such a time as this, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we're going to go back to World War II. I mentioned Winston Churchill in his Never Surrender speech just before the start of World War II. Well, there was another key figure during that time. His name, and he has a long name, Albert Frederick Arthur George. I'm going to say his name again, Albert Frederick Arthur George. To those close to Mr. Albert, he was called Bertie. I wouldn't call him that. If that man was still alive and I had a chance to meet him, I would, Your Majesty. And you're like, who is that, Ray? That gentleman is none other than King George the Sixth of Great Britain and the United Kingdom. Okay? All right. This man was the king of the British Commonwealth from December 11th, 1936 until his death, 1952. He was the second oldest to his dad, King George V. when his dad died, or let me back up, let me give you a little bit of history about Mr. Albert. Okay? While his father was King of England, Albert was the second son. He had a older son, David, who later became King Edward. More on him in a moment. Albert, let me tell you about him because I did my homework on this guy. Albert graduated from Naval College as a teenager. He joined the Royal Navy and Air Force during World War One. Okay, 1920, he was named the Duke of York. Okay, his wife is Lady Elizabeth Bowles. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. 1923, they had two daughters. Youngest daughter is Margaret. Oldest daughter is Elizabeth. Okay, well, Albert had a problem. He had a few problems. First off, he really didn't believe in himself because he wanted his father's love and approval. And then he had a major, and that resulted into a stuttering problem. I mean, this guy stuttered so much. I mean, you thought Moses, the deliverer, the lawgiver, had a stuttering issue. This guy, Albert, major stuttering issue. The only time that dude didn't stutter is if he was cussing somebody out. Oh, by the way, a wonderful movie based on Albert, King George VI, The King's Speech by with Colin Firth. Get that. Check that movie out. The King's Speech. I have it on DVD. Excellent, excellent, excellent film. Okay. The King's Speech. All right. So in the mid 19s, and I mentioned the King's Speech, that's when a relationship begun with Prince Albert and speech therapist Lionel Logue. Lionel Logue is his name, to help him with breathing exercises, changing his thought pattern, dealing with fear and everything. And he was able to speak much more confidently, especially in a crisis like World War II coming up. More on the breathing part and everything later when it comes down to speech and thinking. Well, here's what happened. 36. King George V died. And then David, the older brother, ascended to the throne and became King Edward VIII. Well, while all this is happening out in Germany, Adolf Hitler was building not only the party, in about maybe 2 years, he became Chancellor of Germany and then took over Germany, war machine and everything. And as you know, World War II started in 1939. Well, while all this was going on, Prince Edward, later King Edward VIII, what was he doing? He was acting like King Ahasuerus, partying, drinking, gluttony. Instead of attending to the business at hand for Great Britain, he wants to party. He wants to, fill his belly, according to Romans chapter 1, verses 28 through 32. And then to make matters worse, you can look it up, folks. Books, encyclopedias, documentaries from National Geographic, and of course, the dramatization series by Netflix called The Crown. Look that up. That was very good. Anyways, The Crown on Netflix, okay? And the bottom line is Edward VIII got him, I mean, he was already distracted. He got further distracted when a twice divorced American socialite named Wallace Simpson came onto the scene and he fell in love. If you ladies, gentlemen, look up the photos of Wallace Simpson. I did it, and I'm gonna tell you right now, and I'm just gonna say this straight up. There are some ladies who are so naturally beautiful. They don't need a whole bunch of makeup, just a little bit. They'll be all right. I've had my wife Lisa, my daughters said the same thing. just just a little bit for those who are naturally beautiful. And then there's some that do need makeup. But with Wallace Simpson, I saw the photos and I'm thinking, there is no makeup or dermatologist that's gonna save this person. Okay. And her character, and I did my homework. Her character was horrible, horrible. I mean, she cared about was herself. So Edward VIII, I'm in love. Hooked up with her, and it was a absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. And while all of this is going on, Hitler and Nazi Germany starts World War II. And then on top of it, it was later revealed that King Edward VIII and Wallace Simpson, they're socializing with the Nazis. And then on top of that, if you are the King of England, you have a special red box of top secret files that you have to brief yourself. You have to talk to your advisors, and then you have to make the decision that will benefit the people, national security, and once again, we are still talking about platforms and destiny for such a time as this. I mentioned again about King Edward VIII and his lover, Wallace Simpson. They were fraternizing and socializing with the Nazis in the late 1930s, which 1939 started World War II and heading into 1940. And basically, Wallace Simpson got a hold of the national security box that had the top secret information and events of high importance for national security and safety for Great Britain. And she was exchanging that along with her dress, her body, and the panties. Yeah, I said it, to the Nazi hierarchy. In other words, Wallace Simpson was for the streets. I'm going to talk to the guys here right now. If that person you in love with, if she does not love God through Jesus Christ first, and her life is not showing that, and she's compromising, and she doesn't respect you, and she betrays you, she's for the streets. Yeah, I said it. I will not apologize for it. Let me talk to the ladies here. I don't care what homeboy looks like, what comes out of his mouth. If he does not love God first and it doesn't show in his actions, his decision making, if he doesn't love God more than on Jesus, more than you or anybody else, kick him to the curb. And if he does not love and respect his mama and disrespect his mama, I got news for you. You can't help him. You cannot help him, fix him, kick him to the curb. He's for the streets also. So what happened? Edward gave up the throne, the crown, and Albert came in and took over. And that's where his relationship that I mentioned earlier with the speech therapist, again, look up the movie, The King's Speech. It'll tell you everything. God will get you into your destiny, and it's better to obey him and you'll be fine than going in kicking and screaming. Amen to that. Okay. Let me also throw something else in. While all this was going on, 1940, from May 26th to June 4th, there was a situation that the Nazi was about to overtake France, and France was about to surrender to Nazi Germany. And French and British troops were pushed all the way back to a place called Dunkirk. And what happened? They were pinched so in between, losing, separated from the troops and everything. And we're talking 400,000 French, British soldiers that were separated. And what happened? Well, Operation Dynamo came into effect in northern France, Dunkirk, okay? And what happened? Well, over 800 vessels ranging from destroyers, fishing boats, civilian pleasure crafts crossed the English Channel from Great Britain to France and rescued 338,000 soldiers. That includes 140,000 French soldiers from being either prisoners of war by the Nazis or killed. Okay, that is Dunkirk. That movie came out in 2015. Check it out. That tells you all. And the bottom line with that, because of George the Sixth becoming king and speaking and addressing the people of Great Britain right after the Never Surrender speech by Prime Minister Winston Churchill, that galvanized the people of England. As a matter of fact, I want to share a couple of quotes from you from Winston Churchill, Sir Winston Churchill. And I love this. Okay, check this out. He said, never give in. Never, never, never give in nothing great or small, large or petty. Never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense, namely common sense. Here's another quote by Winston Churchill. We shall fight on the beaches, fight on the landing grounds, fight in the fields, in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. Okay. And here's another one. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An opportunist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. And finally, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Now, some of y'all think, well, Martin Luther King said it. Yeah, he said it second. He originally got it from Winston Churchill. There you go. All right. So the practical application is like the people of Iran, like the people of Great Britain, and now today, for such a time as this, you got to take a stand for life, righteousness, for God when it's not popular. It's easy to follow the crowd. But when you got to do something and you got to do it alone, even if your own family members are talking trash in your face behind your back, betraying you, so be it. You got to do it. I'm going to give you a couple of more references of how all of this applies. First off, there was a musician. He played the guitar, he played the piano. His love for history was so awesome. He would have been a great history professor. He's from Long Island, New York. Who's this guy? Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Billy Joel. Well, he had a hit song out in 1990 called We Didn't Start the Fire. It was based on Billy Joel's historic timeline from the time he was born, 1949, when Harry Truman was in office. And Harry Truman, he took over as president when Franklin Roosevelt died in office. He was the one that recognized Israel as a nation. And he had a famous line, the buck stops here. He made the decision, the commander in chief, to drop the atomic bomb twice on Japan because Japan would not surrender, but they were so cruel to their own people. They were worse than the Nazis to their own people. And whether you agree with it or not, the atomic bomb had to be dropped in order for Japan to surrender because they were not going to surrender. They were not, I mean, they were beat and they still were fighting. So those are the two things Harry Truman's going to be remembered for. And that was at the time Billy Joel was born. Also at the time was when the Red Scare communism making its trenches in the United States. Okay, so the song "We Didn't Start the Fire" started all the way back in the late 40s when Billy Joel was born, all the way to when it came out when Ronald Reagan was in office. And a lot of school teachers, if you look up the lyrics, use that for US and world history, using that song and the video to teach their students. An excellent tool. You got to look at the lyrics. It's excellent. But you're wondering, is Iran in that song? Here's the key verse from that song: Ayatollahs in Iran, Russians in Afghanistan. While all that was going on in Iran, when the Ayatollah was blackmailing and threatening us, superpower Russia invaded Afghanistan only to leave a whole bunch of equipment there. Does this sound familiar? Yes, it does. Left a whole lot of military equipment there for the terrorists to do whatever, protecting their poppy fields for opium. That's their main thing there. And the former Soviet Union left Afghanistan with its tail between their legs, and that was the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union. That's one thing. Here's another one from Hollywood. I already mentioned the movie The King's Speech, but here's another one person that basically stood in the face of anti Semitism, in the face of Adolf Hitler himself, and said, I'm not doing this. And I'm not joining forces with you. Hollywood legend screen actress Merlene Dietrich. That for those who know about Madonna, who did the song Vogue and paid homage to Merlene Dietrich. Let me tell you about her. From the 1980s up into the 70s, she was one of the most classic Hollywood glamorous icons, actress. She rose to fame as Lola Lola in The Blue Angel in 1930, and she was just hardcore actress. Excellent, the whole nine yards. Well, let me tell you what happened with Merlene Dietrich in the 1930s. She was a German-born actress. She became so famous that Adolf Hitler approached her in 1937, and they asked her, "Can you do some films for us promoting Germany?" Merlene Dietrich said, "Absolutely not." Excuse me. Left Germany, came to the United States. 2 years later, she was a naturalized U.S. citizen, and then she pledged her allegiance, renouncing her German citizenship, becoming a U.S. citizen, and she entertained U.S. and allied troops through the US. Okay, absolutely. There you go. Merlene Dietrich. And she knew she had to go, because if she had stayed there, ladies and gentlemen, you know what was going to happen to her? Nazi Germany was either going to torture her, put her in a concentration camp, not just her family, and then they're going to kill her. So she knew she had to hightail out of Nazi Germany. So Merlene Dietrich is one person. Let me give you the sports references to this. At that same time, Nazi Germany, Berlin, hosted the Olympics, and that was Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens, as you folks know, in the 1936 Berlin Olympics, Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals: 100, 200 relay, 4 by 100-meter relay, and the long jump. And here's what a lot of people don't know, and I highly recommend this YouTube video: the origin of these German brothers who were sons of a shoemaker. Well, those guys started making shoes first for the German troops during World War II, but they started making sports shoes at the same time. And what was born? Adidas. Look it up. And they made Adidas track and field shoes for the Nazi German athletes. And one of those athletes, whose name I can't recall at the moment, gave the shoes to Jesse Owens. Look it up, because the German athlete, loved Jesse Owens. So he gave him his shoes, and the rest is history. Fast forward to the mid 1970s. In 1975, Atlantic Richfield Company, an oil company known as Arco, sponsored Jesse Owens to promote teamship, to honor Jesse Owens' legacy with the Jesse Owens Games. Arco sponsored the Jesse Owens Games. It was the American Youth Track and Field program that spanned it from 1975, resumed in 1977, ended in 1984. Well, back in 1979, the Arco Jesse Owens Games came to San Francisco at McAteer High School, where boys and girls participated. There was one young man that participated, ran the 400 meters, finished dead last, and this young man, was approached by one of the coaches, game officials, and said, I like the fact that you did not quit. You persevered and you didn't quit, even though you finished last. Hey, I don't want you leaving empty handed, but there is an event where we don't have enough participants, and I believe you can medal, maybe win the event once you go over to where the shot put area is. Well, that kid went to the shot put area, and the officials said, we don't want the kids to get hurt. So we're going to change the shot put event to the softball throwing event. You're going to throw the softballs like you're throwing the shot put. So that kid signed up. That kid finished third. That kid was introduced to him. He was introduced where he met the man himself, Jesse Owens. Well, that kid turned out to be me. I met the man himself, Jesse Owens. He was my hero because he stood up to Adolf Hitler and basically told him to stick it through his performance. He also came back home and had to deal with racism. I'm not talking about this nonsense you've been seeing the last 6 years. I'm talking about hardcore racism. This man won 4 gold medals, told Adolf Hitler to stick it, and then have to come home and got to deal with Jim Crow, segregation, all that. And it was an honor to meet the man who inspired me. Little did I know in 1979, 3 months after I met Jesse Owens, he died of cancer. And I was stunned, but at the same time, it was an honor for me to meet Jesse Owens. Two more sports references. 47 years ago, when all this thing in Iran started with what Jimmy Carter did and demoralized the United States, a group of college young men was on the U.S. Olympic hockey team, Olympics Lake Placid, New York, 1980. They reached the semifinal medal rounds and had to face grown professional men from the Soviet Union, the premier hockey team at the time. They had faced the Soviets a week earlier in Madison Square Garden and got stomped on 15-2. That's right, 15-2 hockey. Very demoralizing in Madison Square Garden. Well, they met them again in the semis of the Olympics. Shocker, 4-3, United States. That boosts the morale of the entire country. Okay? And then they faced Finland, beat them, won the gold. And you got to understand that what that hockey team did, that lifted the country's morale following global humiliation thanks to Jimmy Carter's disastrous domestic and foreign policies. How bad was it? Well, it did get worse. Why? Because instead of taking care of the United States and the financial situations that cities were having, like New York City, Jimmy Carter, look it up. You just look it up. He allowed New York City to go bankrupt, okay? Because he gave in to the Ayatollah and was being blackmailed. I remember it as a kid. It was absolutely insane. Then he turns around and tells the U.S. Olympic track and field team and all the athletes for the Summer Olympic Games in Moscow, Russia, we're boycotting it. That means Edwin Moses could not continue his streak of wins in the 400-meter hurdles, okay, which was absolutely disgusting. And then you had a Olympian in Riverside named Sippy Woodhead, Olympic swimmer. Her opportunity to compete for gold was dashed thanks to Jimmy Carter. Okay, so that was just absolutely horrible of what Jimmy Carter did. Not only that, let me throw something else in, and this is not in my notes. In the late 1980s, 78, 79, New York City was not only dealing with financial issues and crime and everything. Does this sound familiar? Sounds like today. Not only that, crime was going through the roof. Also, and don't forget the blackouts, energy crisis, okay? Well, you had this guy who held New York hostage called the Son of Sam, 38 Revolver, and Billy Joel had a song for that too, called Closer to the Borderline. And the lyrics to that part of the lyrics of that song, Blackout, Heat Wave, 44 Caliber, Homicide. That was what was going on in New York. That was the Son of Sam going on a killing spree, killing people, holding the city of New York hostage. And the morale booster for New York came in two situations. One, the New York Yankees, the Bronx Zoo era, won back to back World Series titles after George Steinbrenner bought the Yankees, and the Yankees from the early to mid 70s was at their lowest. Okay. So the Yankees winning the World Series in the late 70s was not only a morale booster for New York, but also for Yankee baseball transplants all over the country. And at the same time, that was going on. You got to have that. Okay. This is where sports comes in. So I had to throw in the Yankee situation in helping the people and everything. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the biblical reference, okay? And that is Esther and Mordecai. Again, we're wrapping this up for such a time as this. Both Esther and Mordecai kept their godly identity, their covenant towards God. They never, like I said earlier, they never assimilated to the degenerate behavior of King Ahasuerus as well as the others. And I got to throw this in, and this is just a thought. You got to put yourself in Esther and Mordecai's position. And I said this earlier. Put yourself in an environment where King Ahasuerus set the tone with the gluttonous eating, drinking until you're filthy drunk. You had the orgies. You were defiling the vessels of God. Being drunk and everything. And you were expected to do what they were doing. And that's the worst kind of peer pressure you can ever deal with. And I want to talk to Gen Z for a moment. Young man, young lady, you do not have to do what everybody else is doing. Okay? I don't care if it's the political correct way or the social correct way. If you know what everybody else is doing is wrong, and you know your mom, your dad is not going to approve of it, and you know in your heart, in your gut, you have no peace and you're restless, don't follow the crowd. Let them talk about you. And let me also say this, they could use their device like this and tablets and all that. They could text behind any screen and text and say what they want to say to you. But if they don't have the courage to come in your face and say it, they're cowards. Okay. So let them talk, let them text. they're cowards. Okay, anybody can follow the crowd. You don't have to. Okay, and here's the other thing that bothers me. You got the same people today who, some of them say they're Christians and they're quoting my body, my choice. Well, I got to tell you something. The word of God says we were redeemed not by corruptible things as silver and gold, but we were redeemed by the incorruptible blood of Jesus Christ. You were bought for a price, okay? So your body does not belong to you whatsoever. First Corinthians 6:20, for you are bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are of God, okay? And I had mentioned earlier in Romans chapter 1, verses 28 through 32, that when folks do not want to retain God in their knowledge, okay, and I'm talking about in your heart, in your spirit, renewing your mind, when you don't want to do that, here's, and I'm going to read it again. I'm going to read this again. Verse 28, chapter 1, Romans. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them up to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with, and I said it all over again, unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whispers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things. People love to do that. Disgusting. Disobedient to parents, proud, boasters. I mentioned that before. Without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection. Not only do they do the same, but have the pleasure in them that do them. I don't know who I'm talking to, but again, I'm going to bring in Gen Z, and I'm also talking to the younger millennials too. Young man, young lady, you may be going through poverty. You may be going through an absentee father. You may feel lonely, insecure, question your identity, your worth. But I'm going to tell you something right now. You may have some people that fit the description of what I just read in the book of Romans, chapter 1, verses 28 through 32. They may entice you with what you may need: food, drink, so called security, so called love, clothes, school, money. That is called bait and switch. They will try to use that to for you to give in, and then you will feel obligated to do what they say. That is not love. That is bondage. They will use you, they will lie to you, and when they finish with you, they're going to discard you. Young man, young lady, God has not given you the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. His perfect love cast out all fear. Fear brings torment. So I'm going to tell you right now, don't fall for the okey doke. Do you understand what I'm saying, young man, young lady? Do not fall for the lie. If they want to curse the church, let them do it. If they want to curse your parents who they've never met, let them do it. They're talking about their own. Okay? So do not fall for the okey doke. Okay? We're going to get back to this. Okay? So Esther and Mordecai, they were expected to do as, in this case, the Persians do. You know the old saying, do as the Romans do. But since they're in Persia, they were expected to do what everybody else was doing. Okay. And again, we were bought with a price. Okay. And because, and here's, let me give you a physical aspect of this. When you are so drunk and so gluttonous, know what that's going to do? And of course, going to the porcelain throne. Okay, you're there. You're going to suffer from dehydration. You're going to suffer headaches. You're going to have an upset stomach. Your digestive system's going to be so out of whack. Your vagus nerve, which starts from your head, that is connected throughout your whole body, especially your digestive system. Your vagus nerve is going to whack your brain and your digestive system out so bad you will not be able to think straight. You will not understand right from wrong. You will hear voices in your head that will torment you left and right. And then you will develop patterns like OCD, stuff like that there. And you will lose so much sleep that you're going to be exhausted. You will not be able to figure stuff out. And because of that trauma, that shock that is going through your body, from a spiritual perspective, that's when the great adversary, the devil, will start talking to you, talking crazy stuff, and you'll be doing stuff that you would never think of doing. And then you're going to feel like, I can't stop. I can't stop. I'm in bondage. And that's when you really going to have to call on the name of Jesus to help you. And what you're going to have to do with that, that I found out, and I did some studying on this. First off, take deep breaths slowly, inhale, exhale, and that will calm your nervous system down. Stick your hands in cold water. That will regulate your central nervous system. It will calm your mind down. And then you're going to have to, and I know some people that have done this, and I've done it myself. You're going to have to start fasting, okay? You're going to have to detox your body, okay? And still keep yourself hydrated, because if you don't keep yourself hydrated, you're really going to have some issues there. So you got to do that. And then you got to you got to fast from other things. For me, I had to fast from sports because I was so into it that it was interfering with my relationship with God. So when God told me, you're not going to watch NFL football. Oh, you'll find out the score later, but you're not going to watch games. College football, same thing. I said, yes, sir. And I spent that time consecrating myself unto God. I'm just sharing this from personal experience, okay? And that is when my vagus nerve and everything started to get regulated, nervous system regulated, my digestive system regulated. I and then that's when I start to hear from God. That's when I started to hear from God, and that's when I allowed God, this is my personal testimony, I allowed God to start dealing with me concerning things that I was carrying in my soul, that unforgiveness, anger, bitterness. I had to let a lot of that go, and I had to forgive some key people who did me wrong. Did it excuse them from being held accountable? Absolutely not. They still had to be accountable for what they did to myself and other people, but I had to let the offense and the bitterness go so my soul could be made whole, so I can be set free, so I can hear from God clearly and do what He commanded me to do. So that is part of my test. So back to King Ahasuerus. He was so out of whack because of the gluttony and being a drunkard. That's why he assassinated Queen Vashti. And remember, I said this in part one. Vashti, her great grandfather is Nebuchadnezzar, King Nebuchadnezzar. Her daddy is King Darius. So she was born into royalty. Ahasuerus was a military man he married up. So figure that one out. And because he didn't have G's around him looking out for him, and he got dirty drunk and so gluttonous, he had probably had so much gas. Why would you sit near him? I mean, oh Lord have mercy. That gas low would be making me want to run away. Well, because of that, that is how Haman creeped in, became his prime minister, and that evil decree went forth, which, by the way, Mordecai found out and warned his spiritual daughter, Queen Esther, and basically gave her the ultimatum and said, look, God raised you up as queen for such a time as this. If you think hiding in the palace is going to save you, think again. Got to get somebody else. but you and your peeps will die and your household too. So you got a decision to make. There you go. Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. This episode, Never Surrender, part 2. This is for people. This is for folks who want wisdom, understanding, and all understanding. Get wisdom. And if you don't know your family history, your family lineage, you'll never know your strengths. You'll never know your weakness. You'll never know your calling. You'll never get a game plan to avoid what your parents, grandparents, great grandparents, great grandparents did to avoid failures and accelerate yourself into your God given destiny. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify. Share this podcast with your loved ones, and we will continue Never Surrender Part 3. Only in Part 3, I am going to make it very personal with everything I shared of what happened. Because again, your darkest moment can be your finest hour. Okay. And that is what Winston Churchill said to the people of Great Britain. And again, thank you again for your patience, your prayers, and your support. Share this podcast with others, and we'll meet again. Until next time, God's blessings upon you, your families, and again, never surrender, okay? Good night and good day.